Hi, this is Tom Loftus, consultant and senior investment analyst at Plan Pilot, and I'm partnering with Bill Karsten, a senior consultant at Plan Pilot, to share our thoughts and ideas for helping you secure a better financial future for you and your family. Please understand that the purpose of this presentation is not to provide you with specific investment advice. Rather, we will be sharing tips and time-tested investment approaches that have helped many people like you succeed in building their financial futures. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Bill Karsten, who will provide an overview of this session and discuss the building blocks of developing a sound financial plan.
Thank you, Tom. During this short presentation, we will first focus on the importance of building a comprehensive financial plan. As a critical first step, a well-funded emergency account provides the foundation that can support your long-term financial plan through challenging times. In times of financial crisis and market downturns, this foundation can provide the confidence you need to stick to your long-term investment plan. Later in our discussion, Tom will highlight key lessons from prior market downturns and illustrate how automated investment solutions, such as target date funds, can keep us properly focused on our long-term objectives. In order to build a sustainable, comprehensive financial plan, you need to first understand your personal or household cash flow, including all sources of income and all expenditures. Starting at the top, what is your take-home pay? Add to that any other reliable, steady sources of income, if you have them. We advise including only steady, predictable sources of income. If you are including bonuses, commissions, or other income that is uncertain, we recommend only including minimum levels that you would fit into the almost certain category. In short, it's better to underestimate your future income and end up with a larger surplus than you planned for. When tracking your expenses, you will want to separate out your core expenses, mortgage payments, rent, utilities, food, etc., from your discretionary spending. Ultimately, the key to improving your financial future and retiring on time or hopefully early is to increase your margin between your net income or take-home pay and your core or fixed costs. As you increase this margin, you will be able to build your emergency fund and ultimately your retirement savings. Looking forward, take advantage of opportunities to increase your savings rate, whether from an increase in pay or a reduction in expenses. Promotions, raises, elimination of student loans, paying off a car loan, all of these events present an opportunity to increase your savings. We strongly encourage you to build an emergency fund that is sufficient to cover at least 3 to 6 months of core expenses before turning your focus to ramping up your retirement contributions. So after you have established a personal or family budget that permits you to set aside savings every month, and you have established a sufficient emergency fund, it's time to turn your focus to developing appropriate investment strategies. Your first consideration should always be the time horizon associated with each of your savings objectives. For short-term goals, such as saving for the down payment on a house purchase in a year or two, you should be focused on protecting your money and invest only in government or FDIC-insured accounts or government-backed investments. For midterm investment goals, think saving for college for your young child. A more diversified investment strategy makes sense. While your child is still young, a more aggressive investment strategy allocated largely to stocks may be appropriate. But then your investment strategy should become more conservative as your child gets closer to graduating high school and going off to college. Many 529 college savings programs offer investment solutions that automatically reduce risk as your child gets older. And then there's your retirement savings. Turning our focus back to your time horizon, it is important to recognize that your goal is to make your retirement savings last as long as you do. Therefore, if you are currently age 40, you plan to retire at age 65, and you expect to live until age 90, your investment time horizon is actually 50 years. For this reason, it is important to maintain an investment strategy aimed at beating inflation or invested in part in stocks well into your retirement years. This is where a focus on two types of risk is critical. We have heard many people say that they simply want to avoid risk. Unfortunately, this is not possible. Rather, the key to a successful investment strategy is to appropriately balance market risk and longevity risk. For someone who is age 25, longevity risk, or not earning enough to outpace inflation, is by far their greater risk when it comes to the retirement investing strategy. On the other end of the spectrum, someone who is in their 70s or 80s should be much more concerned about market risk or the risk of significant short-term losses. In developing your retirement investment strategy, you want to balance these risks based on your time horizon, which again is how much longer you estimate you have to live, and adjust your investment allocation to become more conservative as your time horizon shortens. With that said, I will now turn it over to Tom to discuss the importance of developing and sticking with a long-term retirement saving and investment plan aimed at beating inflation.
Thank you, Bill. And I want to take a few of your last words and reiterate them as I review this next slide. The notion of a long-term saving and investment plan is very important because it requires a different mindset and discipline than any shorter-term investing. Very fortunately, long-term investing also offers individuals unique opportunities to better achieve their desired outcomes, which are captured in an example here. First, there is no doubt that setting aside an adequate amount of money is key in achieving your long-term goals. Case in point, if you don't save enough, any investment opportunity that you pursue will not get you across the finish line. The importance of saving is captured in the first chart on the page here. All other things being equal, an investor who is consistently saving more for their retirement is better positioned to succeed. What the second chart on the slide exemplifies, however, is an equally powerful yet often underappreciated concept in long-term saving and investing: the power of compounding. When you invest for a longer period of time, your money has more time to grow. And it's not just those principal dollars you put in that are growing over time. Your earnings on that principal are growing too, as well as the earnings on those earnings, and so forth. Over a few years, the power of compounding may seem underwhelming, but over the course of decades, it's significant. The second chart on the slide here shows just that. In this example, all three investors plotted on the chart are assumed to be setting aside the same amount of money annually, but the age at which they begin setting those dollars aside varies. As you can see between the gray and orange lines, the investor who begins setting aside money just 10 years earlier ends up with roughly double the savings at retirement. The key takeaway here is to save early and save often. A dollar you put away today is worth a lot more than a dollar you put away 10 years down the road once the power of compounding takes effect. So, we are now shifting gears toward how to invest. And the chart on this slide is a great starting point. It is a very simple and festively colored chart, but there are several good lessons to be learned from it for the long-term investor. The chart plots the growth of $100 invested in the S&P 500 index 20 years ago. The green and red coloring scheme highlights the periods of times where the market trended up or trended down more than 5% in one direction before reversing. Key takeaway number one here is the overall trajectory of the chart's growth. History has shown us that over the long term, money invested in the markets that remains invested will appreciate. It can and has always overcome shorter term setbacks when it remains invested long term. The chart shifts from green to red quite frequently, but the long term trend is up. This leads to another notable observation from the chart. The 20 years of history included in the chart captures the three major market downturns we've endured: the dot-com bubble of the early 2000s, the great financial crisis of 2008, and most recently, the coronavirus sell-off in March 2020. All three of these events were profoundly impactful, but even in combination, they have not impeded the long-term growth of an investment in the US stock market. At the same time, the chart shows that these types of major sell-offs are typically followed by extended market recoveries. As a long-term investor, you should always remain focused and disciplined to that long-term strategy and avoid letting shorter-term disruptions or noise derail you. Shifting away from a long-term strategy in the face of short-term stress almost always leads to missed opportunity. At this point, your next logical decision is how or where specifically to invest. And this is often a challenging or otherwise intimidating topic for most people. As Bill had mentioned earlier, the purpose of this presentation is not to provide you with specific investment advice. That said, we are not recommending any specific investments to you, but we do recommend you explore target date fund options, whether you determine they're the right solution for you, or you simply use them as a conceptual tool to help you choose a different strategy for yourself. Target date funds were created out of the acknowledgement that most long-term retirement investors either are not financially savvy or simply do not have the time to regularly monitor and adjust their investment strategy. When peeling back the covers, the typical target date fund is comprised of a well-diversified set of underlying funds that invest in hundreds or sometimes thousands of different securities across many different asset classes. These funds allow investors to use a single fund solution that provides the full diversification they need. Equally important, target date funds are designed to match your age with your risk tolerance. And once you're invested in a target date fund, it will automatically rebalance and de-risk your portfolio as you age and move toward and into retirement. As part of this rebalancing, target date funds are following that same disciplined long-term approach that we stressed earlier, buying stocks as markets go down and selling them when the markets go up, not the other way around. This next slide provides a graphic representation of the target date fund investment approach in what is called a target date fund's glide path. On the left, you have the asset allocation of a younger investor. With longevity risk as a key concern, the young investor has much more exposure to equities and just a small allocation to safer haven bonds. As you can see, as the young investor ages toward retirement, his allocations become increasingly conservative, shifting his focus from longevity to market risk. This glide path graphic is just a simple and generic illustration, but the actual glide paths that exist for target date funds are carefully crafted utilizing research, data, and statistics. If you consider yourself to be a less sophisticated investor, or if you are concerned that your emotions may drive unfavorable reactions to market pullbacks, then commitment to a target date fund strategy may be a suitable solution for you. And for those who are more sophisticated, target date funds are still an excellent tool to reference as you set your own allocations. Compare your personally set allocations to those of a target date fund investor your age. If your allocations are drastically different, take the opportunity to review them and confirm that your personal situation dictates a significant variance from a target date fund strategy. On that final note, I will turn things back over to Bill to revisit a few of the key points from this presentation.
Thanks, Tom. In summarizing the keys to maintaining a successful investment strategy, it is critical to first recognize the damaging impact that short-term emotions can have on long-term financial plans. During the financial crisis of 2008 and 2009, as well as in the immediate aftermath, many people abandoned their long-term investment strategies. For many, the fear of significant short-term losses greatly outweighed the fear of not earning enough in the long term to meet their retirement objectives. Investment analysts were not particularly helpful in this environment either, as many of them were predicting very low stock market returns in the following decade, despite markets being down more than 50% from a year earlier. These experts' opinions simply amplified the focus on protecting your retirement dollars in the short term assuming there were not significant gains to be made for years to come. In reality, those who got out of the markets in 2008 and 2009 and stayed out missed out on one of the greatest decades of stock market investing. As a result, these investors also set themselves up to have to work for several more years than they had originally planned in order to reach their retirement goals. Understanding behavioral finance can help you avoid future missteps. Preparing yourself to fight the urges of short-term loss aversion and following the herd can help you make better decisions and prevent you from derailing your long-term financial plan. Your best defense may be to commit to a professional retirement investment solution, such as a target date fund, or if it's available in your retirement plan, a managed account solution or in-plan advice. Alternatively, if you are determined to manage your investment allocations on your own, we recommend developing a personal investment policy, one that places strict parameters on your investment allocations, and sticking with it no matter what you hear in the news. In closing, we thank you for your time, and we hope you found the information we shared today to be helpful in developing and committing to your own personal investment strategy.